Welcome, everyone, to this week's Cat's Eye on the Future. This week, we have a very special guest. Writer, speaker, and futurist Lada will be joining us. Along with us is Plain, another show host here at Time Monk Radio Network. And I want to welcome both Lada and Plain to the show this evening.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Looking forward to this. Before we get started, Lada wanted me to mention she does an awful lot of things and talks about and is interested in many, many subjects. She's also a writer, and I actually have really enjoyed her novels as well. We won't probably even touch, a tenth of or less of anything that she talks about normally, so on this particular show. So for those of you who would like to get more information, she wanted me to give out, you can read her blog, which is Futurist is Trendscast. That's FUTURSTREND cast at WordPress.com. And there's also a Lada Ray YouTube channel. So if you have any questions about anything we go into tonight or any of the other things that Lada talks about or any of her topics, just go there and you can find out a lot more information. But tonight we were going to talk about some of the more esoteric and sort of metaphysical things that are some of the background in her novels. And she wanted to start with the sort of dual nature of the world. And I'd like you to kind of explain that a bit to us, because I'm not sure, I'm a little confused about it myself, and I'm sure the listeners would enjoy hearing about it.
Sure. Okay, so our Earth, our world, some call it hologram. Well, I prefer to refer to it as a yin-yang world. See, I have a very strong background in Oriental studies, including Feng Shui. I'm a Feng Shui master, so yin-yang world, it really does sound true to me, especially if you look at it from the standpoint of either balance or imbalance of the nurturing, the submissive, the feminine, and the aggressive or assertive, perhaps, the masculine, the something that is initiating versus something that is nurturing and something that maintains. I believe the nature of yin-yang in general, what these two notions and what they mean together, is understood by most people on the planet nowadays. Everybody knows the circle, which the ancient name for it is Kon, C-O-N in English, or K-O-N, that would be in Russian. That's actually an ancient Russian word. This circle divided into two. One side is black, another side is white, which is called yin-yang, the yin-yang circle. And inside of which black has a dot of white in it, and the white side, the white half, has a dot of black. In other words, as expressed in various different expressions that float around our language. For example, an expression like, in every victory there is a seed of defeat. That's that seed, the seed of the opposite. In the yin, a seed of yang. In the seed of yang, there is a seed of yin. In other words, it is never fully yin or yang. There is also a possibility of potentiality of the opposite in each of the halves. And the highest achievement is to unite these halves. In other words, while they recognize, the yin part recognizes that it's nurturing and maintaining, and the yang part recognizes that its role is assertiveness, initiation. That's all on the positive side, of course. I'm not talking about aggression, or which is the negative side of the yang. While it's recognized that they are different and their roles are practically opposite, they have to unite in order to form the circle, Kon, or yin-yang circle, and work together cooperatively. This is really, in a nutshell, our world, how our world should work. But unfortunately, instead we have struggles, we have disasters, we have struggles, we have adversity, wars all the time. This is because yin and yang are in imbalance in our world. We as humans are still unable to balance to this day. We had so many chances, so many opportunities, so many lessons were taught to us through previous wars, and we're still returning to that. We keep respinning our karma, of which I will talk later. Instead of resolving the karma and exalting ourselves to the fully cooperative world, which in terms of yin yang would signify balance, would signify harmony. So to explain this further, see, the earthly realm that we live in as humanity is what is called the fully incarnated 3D world. I'm talking about this cosmically now. Cosmically speaking, this is one of the few fully incarnated three-dimensional worlds. Some people call it 4D, but third density. But this is almost to me like splitting hairs, and perhaps I will touch upon that later. So 3D means that it is a very physical world. Everything is fully incarnated, fully physical. The positive of this for humanity is that humanity is incredibly creative. This is an amazingly creative culture as far as cosmic cultures go. We as humans, we dream and we create. We also have desires to propel ourselves somewhere further, to make something happen. We can channel our thoughts and our dreams into reality. But the negative, or perhaps the challenging, maybe it's the better word, side of that is that because of its high incarnation, high materialization, we are experiencing incredibly sharp contrast or incredibly sharp polarity, which is what I started with, yin and yang. So the wise, the evolved human will look at the opposite or the polarity or the contrast that they're seeing and understand the meaning of that contrast and try to work with it, try to understand that this is still part of self. Remember that little dot of yang in yin and little dot of yin in yang. You always contain a part of that opposite that you are facing, that perhaps sometimes you think as your enemy. Instead, you should think that this is all your friend and part of you. It is a part of you. And therefore, try to unite with it and work together to form a harmonious whole. This is how Feng Shui looks at life. This is how Eastern, the most advanced Eastern philosophies look at it. This is the goal. Well, this is incidentally the ancient Russian Vedic culture also look at it this way. Same with Hindu culture, the Vedas. If you remember the Indian Vedas, there is Russian Vedas that talk about the same thing. And so instead of uniting these two sides that by now you would think that people know enough to understand that they have to work cooperatively, the polarities right now are getting wider. And the sharper the contrast, the more experience we have that allow for consciousness and expansion and materialization. This is one of those paradoxes of living in 3D, where at the same time, consciousness expansion and materialization is advancing, but our lives are getting more and more in focus as far as polarity and the contrast goes. Well, but at the same time, we know ourselves better and better. So it's like the old expression, know thyself. And so that's how it materializes through this polarity. So we have this constant struggle between polarities and fight between polarities, and this constant yearning of uniting of the polarities at the same exact time. So this is all great, and cosmically speaking, a lot of expansion of consciousness, therefore expansion of the universe around us, happens on Earth. This is like a ground zero for the consciousness expansion, universally speaking. This is what a lot of ETs think, at least. But the problem that accompanies a life and consciousness expansion to this degree in 3D through such hands-on experiences is karma. Karma is what makes the world go round, so to speak, but that's also what then starts pulling us down at some point. And so at this point, Earth accumulated a very heavy karma. So this karma gets piled up layer after layer of struggles and contrast as people perhaps make choices. Sometimes people make very good choices and they accumulate positive karma. That karma propels us to new heights and allows us to move forward or evolve. Then choices that also accumulate are negative choices, and these weigh down and drag us down. So karma is cumulative, and presently Earth has accumulated such heavy karma that it started really not disallowing us from perhaps moving forward. I do write about that in my mystical thriller, The Earth Shifter. So that's one reference. Well, I would like to proceed to the next issue now, unless you have some questions.
Hey, Lada, I was fascinated there when you were talking about Russian Vedas. I think we're all familiar with Indian, the Hindu Vedas. What are these Russian Vedas? Could you tell us a little bit about those briefly?
Yes, actually, I'll just tell you right away that this is a huge topic. So in order to talk about that, I would need one or two separate segments, at least, you know. So I'm just going to mention that there are the so-called Rus-Aryan Vedas or Slavano-Aryans from Slav. It depends, and these are mostly interchangeable notions. You can call it Rus Vedas, Slavic Vedas, or Slavano-Aryan Vedas at the same, on the same plane. There's no difference in term practically. This information has been suppressed for the longest time. In fact, what we know as Indian Vedas, these are Slavano-Aryan Vedas, which are probably the oldest document on the planet. When first people came to the planet, they were called Aryans. And again, as I said, this is such a big topic, but I'm just going to throw a few things at you now. What you know as Aryans, the word that was absorbed by German fascists, that's not, they were a part of this culture, like all Europeans are. But this culture really started out, they came to Siberia, northern Siberia, and from there on, they spread around the earth. Aryans, what Aryans signifies in the ancient Rus dialect or Rus language or Slavic language, if you will, this is the mother tongue from which a lot of various languages actually descended. It signified those who work the land, or what is known as or in the English language, orать in Russian. That's to plow. That's a plow. That's people who worked the land or who worked with the land. But also look at the word Aryan, and now look at the word Orion. Do you see any similarities here? In other words, these were people from Orion, as understood amongst many Russian scientists who deal with these topics. There is a lot of material that I researched myself throughout my life, and that connects and resonates very well with research by various Russian scientists that was suppressed before, that I actually found out about literally in the last year. And my own material resonates with that. So I'm going to be writing about it. I'm going to speaking about it a lot eventually. This is very fascinating topic. So Indian Vedas or Hindu Vedas that we know about right now, this is the best preserved Vedas coming from the same source, from that source, that original source. And, you know, I could say also this, that actually different cultures on the planet were given the custody of bits and pieces of that same wisdom, that one wisdom that got splintered, that came from people who came to the earth originally. And we're probably talking millions of years ago, the original the original settlers, for lack of a better word, who came to populate the new earth, the new realm, the new. Incidentally, at that time, it was a 5D realm. In other words, it was when that yin-yang, that con that I talked about, the yin-yang con, it was one. People lived fully cooperatively, and their yin-yang nature could be expressed in love and cooperation with each other. But then as people started spreading around the planet, and then divisions occurred, this is a natural process. As you spread, you lose your links, you lose links with each other in the past. And then various power struggles ensue, various desires, greed, and perhaps even animosity towards each other. And that's how people lost their connections. But for lack of a better word, the universe is so wise. The wisdom was not lost. It was given, bits and pieces were given to different cultures to hold on to. Like, for example, as we said, Indian Vedas, these are the holders of that type of wisdom, that part of wisdom. Then the yin-yang con that I described, this is a purely Asian thing that's who got to hold on to it. Incidentally, feng shui, also the kind of science of how to live in harmony with the world around you on planet Earth. Also, basically Chinese and the Indians, that's called Vastu Satra in India, got to hold on to this part of wisdom, etc., etc. We can talk about Norse runes, for example. So the Norse people were given that part of wisdom to hold on to, etc., etc. I can go on and on and on. This is a very, very long discussion, very interesting and extremely controversial. And one day, I'm sure that it will all come together. I promise I'll talk a lot more about this in the future.
Okay, Lada, thanks for the intro.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, I think that actually leads really well some of what you were talking about, the founding and how people came here and how the planet started. I think that leads really well into the second thing you wanted to talk about, which I think was Earth and Earth karma.
Right. We started already talking about the karma. So the karma right now, the reason I emphasize that is the karma is what accumulates. You know how debris accumulates. So just from life, you have to clean up your house once in a while. Otherwise, it will be a sty, right? If you don't vacuum, if you don't wash the floors, I don't know, if you don't dust the counters, if you don't remove the dirt and the accumulated waste in the house, if you don't throw it out, it will clutter your life eventually. Once it clutters your life, you cannot think straight. You cannot move forward. You get more and more depressed if you live in a cluttered house. As a feng shui master, I can tell you a lot about it, right? So basically, that's what karma does to each individual internally and to the entire world as well that we live in, because there is individual karma, which most people understand how that works. They think, well, here's individual karma. Most people think reap what you sow, or as Indian would put it, if you don't work out some issue in this life, you will have to reincarnate in the next life to work out that same issue. And you will be reincarnating until that issue is worked out for you. This is basically the Oriental, the Eastern way of understanding karma. This is all personal karma that we just mentioned. And incidentally, there's no time for reincarnation anymore because the karma is accelerating. A lot of people are noticing very quick or instant karma in their lives, and also in the life of the planet. So the personal karma combined, all humans' karma combined, constitutes the Earth's karma. And if somebody pretends that does not concern them, think again. It concerns each and every of us. Every action and every thought we think adds to the Earth's karma. Either it adds negative or it adds positive karma. And as I said before, positive karma allows us to move forward, to evolve, to expand, to excel, to actually fulfill our dreams. And negative karma drags us down. And until we work it out, one way or the other, both on personal and on the Earth level, it does not allow us to move forward. So right now, because of the heaviness of karma, the universe, the universal scale of karma cannot, well, and again, don't hold me on to these terms. I'm actually against putting labels such as these. I always try to explain everything in the words that are well understood, everyday words. I don't try to have these like big words used, but everybody understands what the scale is, and everybody understands what the universe is. So there is such a rebalancing scale that exists. It is a nobody watches it. There's no like being sitting somewhere and keeping the tally. It is self-rebalancing. It also can be unbalancing, which is what we are experiencing right now. So when humans work out their karma through, how can it be done? Through forgiveness, for example. When a person who actually just suffered a loss by the hand of somebody who was vicious and who was acted out a very bad karma, if they forgive back, if they don't seek vengeance, which is what Jesus talked about actually when he said, everybody knows his words, then a huge amount, a splash of positive karma. Well, unfortunately, right now, this is almost impossible to give another cheek when somebody slaps you on one cheek, give another cheek. It's almost impossible because in terms of country to country, that means that those who are aggressors would keep slapping you on that cheek. And the example I always give in my writings is what US is doing to various countries that cannot withstand, they cannot respond properly, or who try to work with them. A great example is Libya, by the way. Excellent example is Iraq, and so many other examples. Saddam tried to work with the US, Gaddafi tried to work with the US and give something to them, which means retreating. This, in terms of those who do not understand forgiveness, who do not understand positive and negative karma, who just keep pressing and pressing and pressing, who are just purely aggressive, acting out their very, very negative yang existence, like the USA, the quintessential, very negatively placed, extremely harmful yang existence that does not take any prisoners, does not understand any reason. That's what US is now to the rest of the world. So they just take more from you. You give them a finger, as they say in the Middle East, they'll bite off your hand. So that's why other countries have to protect themselves. They have to consolidate and try to protect themselves, but by also arming themselves, because giving something to the US only prompts them and encourages them to take more from you. So that is another good way. In fact, protecting yourself is another good way of living out at least a positive to neutral karma, neutralizing the bad karma, in other words. So when you protect yourself properly, what you do is that you say, I am peaceful, I'm non-aggressive, but don't come near me, because you will meet with a very strong response that you will not enjoy. And so that stops a lot of aggression, which means that severely bad karma does not materialize as a result, which again adds in the balance, adds to the positive karma. So going back to the world we live in now, we are in fact half of our existence is in a 3D world, and another half is in a 4D world. 4D world is basically the World Wide Web, is what Bitcoin, incidentally, is a quintessential 4D incarnation. On the negative side, 4D is something like cyber spying. NSA works purely in 4D world. All these NSA scandals, Snowden revelations, what NSA is doing, spying on leaders of various countries, that's purely 4D. I will have an Earthshift report coming out, which will be on my blog. It will be announced on my blog very soon, which will be entitled Wars of the Future Past, or What is 4D Warfare? Various viruses like Stuxnet, and I will be talking about the new virus that came out and how that works. Viruses that can disable entire industries, entire cities. This is the kind of new warfare that is invented. So what I want to stress here is that our 1 foot of humanity is in 3D, fully incarnated world where you can touch everything and feel everything with your fingers. It's fully materialized. Another is in the world that is 4D, which is the next step from 3D, the next step up, sort of. It is not a materialized world. As you know, the World Wide Web, all this, which is digital, and this is like a blueprint. This is something that comes before 3D, in other words. And this world, 4D world, as you already can see from what I just said, does not eliminate confrontation. Confrontation stays in this world, in the 4D dimension, that is, in 4D. It just transfers from the physical world, where confrontation is something like beating each other up or blowing each other up, and physically eliminating life. What it does, it transfers into the mental sphere from the physical, on the level of the mind. But damage can be just as bad or much worse. So it's not as cruel, perhaps overtly, in the eliminating life kind of sense, but it can do just as much damage by causing the whole city to shut down, for example, and then it's a slow death after that. So that's what 4D is. Well, from this, I am transitioning very smoothly, I could say, into the 5D. I wanted to give a small introduction to what 5D is. And as I said before, that great question that Plain asked me, where, the Rus or Aryan Vedas come from. So when people first came to Earth, the idea was to live out the 5D existence, which is what I described in the beginning. It's fully harmonious existence between the two halves, the yin and yang half. But as animosities, as alienation, as people were spreading around the earth and started having differences, as all that started accumulating, people started descending very quickly into 3D. And this is where we are now. So right now we have a lot of people. Some of them are so-called earth angels, which again is a huge different topic that we should discuss sometime else. I'm just going to mention this. Earth angels, there's another word for that, light workers. Some people may recognize one term or another. It's practically can be used interchangeably. Light workers can also, some of them can be indigo, some can be crystal children. You've probably, I'm sure that a lot of people heard at least some of these terms. So earth angels or light workers, a lot of them incarnated for the purpose of transitioning the earth, or rather humanity, into 5D. Most people do not realize that it all started with 5D, and then it descended as karma started accumulating and weighing down on humanity. As it was advancing in development, unfortunately, it was also descending in calibration and in dimensional, in dimensional space, time-space continuum. So right now, in fact, we need to bring it back up to 5D. But for some reason, despite the efforts of many light workers, and incidentally, people present here are in this category, all present are in this category that I'm mentioning, light workers, earth angels, in this discussion, I mean. And I'm sure a lot of people drawn to this video, or probably all of them, will also be in this category, working on the same, trying to figure out how to transition humans back into 5D, where they actually belong. Here's the problem, why it's still not working. Because, as I said, the karma is very, very heavy. The problem is that until the karma is worked out and lightened up sufficiently, humanity cannot make that leap into 5D. So the first thing to do is like cleaning the house and removing all the trash that has been accumulated in the house, is clearing out and removing the karma. So as I mentioned, one way to do it is to forgive. Another way is to acquire wisdom. Wisdom erases karma. Wisdom can come in different forms, and one of them is, of course, forgiveness. Another is rising above it. What I will mention, again, I don't know who listens to this video and who will listen in the future. I know that there is a lot of controversy, and a lot of people understand what is happening in Russia. Since I'm Russian, I know all this, firsthand, of course. And so I can say with a very high level of confidence that Russia is the engine which is trying to push humanity into a more balanced way of living, into clearing that karma, into balancing the karma, with a subsequent idea of pushing humanity upward into 5D, where they stop actually fighting and start living cooperatively and in peace and some kind of understanding with each other. So, yes, and just to mention, Putin, the president of Russia, he is at the forefront of that. And I do realize when I say this that depending on the audience, some may not perceive it correctly, what I just said. But go to my blog, go to my Earthshift reports, listen to my videos, and you might also acquire a better understanding of what I'm talking about. So Earth angels or light workers are all working on it.
You have been listening to part 1 of Cat's Eye on the Future. We'll return to the show right after these short messages. Do you have questions? The cards have answers. If you would like a personal reading with Melody, just go to my website, melodipsychicreadings.com. That's Melody with an I, psychicreadings.com, for information or email me at melodyreader@gmail.com. Readings are available using Skype, phone, email, or even in person if you are lucky to live in Ireland. Why not find out what special messages the cards have just for you and book a private reading today? We now return to part 2 of Cat's Eye on the Future.
Here's the problem with Earth Angels and Light Workers. These humans or these evolved souls incarnate, for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, they incarnate from such dimensions where they don't understand what fighting is. They don't have any of that. And so when they come here, they have an incredibly difficult time adjusting to 3D. They despise fighting. They despise wars. They, depending on what dimension they actually incarnated from what world they came into this world from, and they start really rejecting anything to do with news about violence around the world and with wars and fighting. So when they start rejecting the news, they actually reject and put the blinders on, and they try to push the Earth towards 5D by perhaps writing something or having doing workshops about how to ascend, ascension workshops, etc., without understanding that until karma is cleared, and to clear the karma, you first have to look it very squarely in the eye. If you avoid looking at it, if you look the other way, if you pretend it does not exist, it will never work out. You have to first recognize it's there. That's the first step of wisdom, that wisdom I mentioned that erases karma. Until you actually recognize it, you're not going to move anywhere. They, unfortunately, tend not to recognize that. They think that if they close their eyes, hear no evil, see no evil, etc., then it will go away. It does not go away. They may not have personally that karma, but the whole earth, which they came to help out, does have it, does carry it. And so they will never be able to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish until they first also, just like all the humans, and stop teaching humans to try to ascend, do spiritual workshops, meditate, first learn to live with each other peacefully on this planet. First, humans have to learn to function properly in 3D and in 4D. See, now humans are transferring their fights into 4D. So their technology, like Einstein once pointed out, is moving forward, but consciousness does not. Consciousness of humans lags behind technological development of those same humans. This is all very bad. This does not get you anywhere. No leap is possible. So what if any Earth Angels, Light Workers are listening to me who are of that kind, who close their eyes, I actually know quite a few such people. They have to open their eyes to reality. They have to make themselves listen to the news. All of us who are present here at this conversation right now, we are in the category that do not close our eyes to reality, that actually fully admit that that's what it is, and we work on explaining to others and helping others understand what is happening in the world, the dirty underbelly of the world, which needs to be exposed first, so people could see it, understand it, and from there on, wisdom comes to move forward. These are the quintessential truth tellers, whistleblowers of the world are from that stock. These are the same light workers, except they understand that first you need to do this first step, acquiring wisdom, seeing it for what it is, in order to move forward.
Sophie, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Lada, I was listening to everything, and it's very interesting. But what struck me was that you were talking about for a little while there, the karma of nations or the karma of the world as being part of that of individuals as well. But you're also talking about the technology, not necessarily, there's not been a spiritual change. Do you think some of what's going on now in the world may be a sort of a karmic or echo, for lack of a better term, to what may have happened in the ancient past?
Yes, of course. That's the point. We have to relive the karma. Even if you don't have your personal karma involved here, but you're part of the planetary karma. And again, I want to stress planetary karma, unfortunately, because Earth is the holographic projection for the entirety of humanity and the entirety of life on Earth. We all experience it. So unfortunately, the animal world, the nature, all that gets stuck in the same karma, even if they themselves, those animals that or those trees, they did not create this kind of karma. Humans create all of the negative karma, or the vast majority of the negative karma on the planet. But everybody is stuck with it. So everybody has to relive it. It may not concern us or some of us personally. Others may be experiencing the brunt of the negative events, whether it's wars or all these crazy, or the crisis or the crazy behavior of some countries towards each other. We may be observing it from the sidelines, but we suffer also. We also do not live in the world in which we ourselves want to live in. So it concerns everybody. We are responsible. Each of us is fully responsible for the world at the very same time. So this will be repeating itself over and over until all of us, including those light workers that I mentioned, also open their eyes and look with eyes open at the contrast that exists on the planet, at incongruity, at imbalance that exists on the planet.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if you're familiar at all with Edgar Cayce.
Yes, of course.
But I know that he said, at least in one of his trances, that different countries have different, or different peoples have different things that they were to teach or to bring to the world. And I remember when we were talking about Russia, one of the things he said about Russia was that basically it would be the hope of future spirituality going into the next, what would be for him like the next century, basically. And I thought that was very interesting. I was wondering if you were aware of that and had any thoughts on it.
Yes, of course. Melody, I think we even mentioned that perhaps one of our past interviews with the Plain Truth on Plain's show, that the role of Russia. And incidentally, anybody who wants to find out much more about it can again go to Futurist Trendcast, my blog, and on the top bar there is a page called Predictions, and in it you will find a lot more, and more material is coming in the future. So I'm going to give this very brief overview. Edgar Cayce is one of the spectacular visionaries of the world, and he, of course, was absolutely right. He struck a lot of people when he first said that, and then throughout the years, nobody could fully understand what did he mean. That's not possible, or whatever in the West people might have been thinking. This is my full picture on this, my perspective, my teaching, if you will. Again, I shy away from big words usually, but this is the accurate word. So we have a yin-yang world, as I mentioned. In this yin-yang world, we have three types of cultures or peoples. Three types of cultures. One type is yang, which is aggressive, assertive, male, dominant, initiating. Can be, again, good, can be bad. This is what we call the West. We define it as the West. we also have yin cultures. And again, degrees of yangness and yinness can be different within any world, any part, any of the segment. So within the yang world, there are some cultures that serve the purpose of yinness. Remember that dot within the yin and yang parts. Within that yang world. So they usually stop too much aggression from happening, perhaps, but not very effectively. So the yin world, the yin side of the earth, is traditionally would be the Middle East, most of Asia, Africa, and South America, or Latin America, rather, that's more accurate. Mexico should be included in that. But with, again, different degrees of yinness. The West, of course, what we understand by the West is Anglo-American civilization, including, of course, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, and Western and most of Central Europe. Basically, Central Europe, Central and Eastern Europe occupy an in-between space, which is sometimes the most difficult and ungrateful place to be. But that's a different story. So these are the two yin and yang sides. And as you noticed, I did not mention Russia. That is because Russia serves is the only culture, and I stress there's no other such culture in the world. It is a fully yin-yang culture. In other words, it's a koan, that yin-yang koan. It encompasses both yin and yang at the very same time. As such, Russia can, when necessary, lean in a crisis, lean on its yang side or yin side to repair the opposite side. This is also why Russia bounces so quickly, so inhumanly quickly from any adversity. Remember, Second World War, for example, in the West, projections were Russia will never recover. The destruction of Russia and the loss of life, 27 million people in the Second World War, plus the complete destruction of industry in the European part of Russia. Complete annihilation of a number of cities like Stalingrad, which is now Volgograd, for example, as one example, or Minsk as the capital of Belarus. At the time, it was part of Russia, part of the Soviet Union, still is part of the Russian world, of course. So the destruction was basically, they were erased. And the whole thing was rebuilt within 10, 15 years. Actually, even less, perhaps, if you take it on merit. You know, it was functioning within 2-3 years. The country was fully functional within 2-3 years after the war ended. Not to mention, it could hold its own on the global arena. But again, that's a different story. That's just one example. And this happens all the time. 1991, when the Soviet Union broke up, and those horrible 90s, as the Russians call them, the complete devastation and the wholesale sellout of the country, of its industry, of all of its achievement, people immigrating, myself included, to other countries in droves. Russia left millions left Russia at the time because it was impossible to live there peacefully, to do, especially for creative people, to do what they came in to do. And Russia bounced back within 10 years. And again, projections were Russia will never get back to normal. Ukraine, meanwhile, was projected to be that beacon of stellar performance, beacon of democracy and development in the post-Soviet space. And now let's see what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Russia. Let's compare the two. So this is how Russia operates. And while it can bounce from the adversity so quickly, at the same time, Russia's role is the global balancer. And that's the hardest place to be. I have a new article on Futurist Trendcast that I just published tonight last night, I mean. And people can also go and look at it about the restart of the Cold War and the new resolution by the U.S. Congress. That article also explains a little bit about Russia's role. So Russia is that global balancer, and which is a very ungrateful and difficult place to be, because you are always hit at. That's at Russia is always directed the brunt of attacks from the West. But Russia is also the only hope of the Yin nations. By their very nature, Yinness means that they are really non-aggressive, except what is happening in the Middle East, but that's a different story, because that's we can talk about this in calibrations when we actually talk about calibrations, because Yinness can become aggressive from sheer horror of its situation. When you're grieving, when you are on the grief mode, grief can turn extremely violent. So that's the quintessential what is happening in some places in the Middle East, because their life is so sad, so grieving, so incongruent with reality, so oppressed. But so Russia is the only hope of Yin nations, which is incidentally most of the world, because Yin nations are actually non-aggressive, so they're not always able to fend off attacks. Well, a great example is India. What Great Britain, British Empire, did to India over the centuries. Before the Brits went to India, India had some of the highest living standards on the planet for those days, say in the 17th century. What the Opium Wars and near-colonization of China, again by the British Empire, and many other, or what happened to Africa, what Europeans did to Africa over a couple of centuries. So Russia is the only hope of protection for the entire Yin world, or the global South and the global East.
You have been listening to part 1 of our 2-part interview with Lada Ray. Please come back next week to hear part 2 of this very exciting interview. Thank you for being with us this week at Cat's Eye on the Future. You have been listening to Cat's Eye on the Future, the show where we take a look at what's coming up in your world and your future. Join us again next time for another episode of Cat's Eye on the Future.